Alright, this is a brief tour of my professional development module, Improving Number Sense and Computational Skills. This was designed specifically to address an issue that we've had at our school where students are doing well, but not quite as good as we would like in their computational skills. They're doing better actually in their problem solving when they are allowed to use calculators, but we're seeing a little bit of a weakness in their computational skills. Here in our module, I made sure to make it very clear where they were to begin, and after this introductory information, what they were supposed to do from there on, because I realized some are not familiar with Moodle, and as a result may be a little bit confused when they initially see the whole layout, so I wanted to remove any kind of confusion right off the bat. I do have an introductory video. I won't show that, but it gives a little bit of the background, some of which I'm giving you now. But then we have the pre-assessment, and this pre-assessment gets a little bit of background of them as an individual, about their knowledge of technology, their comfort level with technology, and a number of specific technologies. And then I ask them to give me an idea of, what they've already tried to do in their classroom with technology, and then again, kind of focusing on the main idea of the module, what they believe the primary reason students struggle to learn basic math operations would be. And the idea here is then in the post-assessment, asking them, do you believe this helped you address this issue? Is one of the questions that I pose in my post-assessment. So, and I found that the responses that I got, said that it would. So that was encouraging. I used Google Docs form to do this. I have the results from the 3 individuals who tried this out. Due to the time constraints, I wasn't able to get 3 math teachers, but in fact, Lauren is actually an early childhood teacher, preschool and kindergarten. Barb Hickson is a former 1st and 4th grade teacher who now tutors kids all the way from kindergarten up through 10th grade or so. So she does deal with some of this directly. And Dan Fitzpatrick is a 6th grade teacher and has taught math. So he had some good insights here. Now, getting back to the presentation, I divided it up into a number of different topics with an accompanying question. And we had 6 different key questions that I wanted to answer. So we'll begin here under using the calculator. I wanted to address, when the appropriate time is to use the calculator. And I actually used Prezi for this. And I'll actually jump to the main idea. The idea that a calculator, the main purpose is to save time. When does it really save you time? When is it more important to do the work yourself? And then, are you becoming too dependent? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Our students need to ask themselves. Jump through these real quick to get to. And then I looked at when do calculators hinder learning, when the focus is on computation, and when students are still struggling with the basics. Obviously we don't want them using a tool to do it for them when they're still struggling with those basics. And then I looked at when are calculators helpful. When the focus is conceptual. We don't want them to get bogged down in the arithmetic necessarily when we're trying to teach a bigger concept. When the students have mastered the computations, obviously then they can move on and let something do it for them because they already know how to do that. And then also when an application requires tedious calculations, and I have here an example, a quadratic formula. It's a formula. Once they know how to do that by hand, obviously they're going to do that over and over again, so using a calculator would be helpful. And in fact, in my upper level classes, we even write a program for their TI calculators that where they just punch in A, B, and C, and it does the whole thing for them, because I know at that point that's just a tedious thing. So that's one thing I wanted to focus on, was making sure that they could identify an appropriate time to use the calculator. Now, since I used Prezi to give this section of the module, I went ahead and included a Prezi tutorial that actually Dr. Ellis from Ashland has on his YouTube channel, and we actually watched back in 505, and that was really helpful, so I included it here because I felt that was a good comprehensive look at how to use Prezi. And the reason why I included some of these tutorials is that as separate from the content is, number one, I didn't want to overshadow the content, but also I understand that a teacher may have already used Prezi, but they've never used Screencast-O-Matic. So they don't necessarily need to watch the Prezi tutorial, while they may want to watch some of the other ones. So I thought that was helpful to separate it like that. Now the second unit here, multiplication by factoring, this was the first time I used Screencast-O-Matic, so I did include a tutorial for that, and I gave a little write-up of what it is. But in multiplication by factoring, I made a video using a PowerPoint presentation in Screencast-O-Matic, and just really tried to get to the root of the issue here. Gave some introductory comments, and then looked at how to break down some problems and use factors to help students understand better some of the basic principles that can help them do things that they didn't think were possible before. And also really drive home the importance of knowing their multiplication tables. That's why I included a test that I actually give my 7th through 10th graders each year. And this isn't something that teachers needed to take. It was simply for them to download it if they wanted to use as a resource for themselves. Now, Unit 4, emphasizing place value. Again, here the focus is on getting students to understand what's going on in a problem. And I begin, this is just one example of many that they could use, going through what we normally teach them, but then posing a question, where'd these come from? And then giving an answer to that and showing what's really going on. And if we can get our students to understand that, then these zeros make sense. When we realize, for instance, that these are 6 tens that we're multiplying by, that's why there's a 0 on the end. And getting them to understand that helps them, number one, to remember to put the 0 there, but it also gets them away from just memorizing some steps. Now, my next unit on comparing fractions and decimals, I really wanted to kind of break down the wall between these two topics that students often think of. So I used bubble.us to compare them. I drew 4 different comparisons and showed how they were similar with fractions and decimals. And for sake of time, I'm not going to get into actually show that. But since I used bubble.us, I included a tutorial for that. So teachers, if that was something that caught their attention and was interesting to them and was a tool they thought they might use, they could then learn how to use it. And this is another tutorial I got from someone else, actually a group called Tech Bytes on YouTube. Had a really, really good introductory tutorial to it. And they actually had some others as well for other things that you could do, but really good introductory tutorial. Now in section 6, I really wanted to encourage teachers to encourage their students to help themselves. So I presented a tour of Khan Academy, and this is really one of the best websites that I've found out there for, particularly for math. Much of it focuses on math, while there are other topics. I gave a basic tour, showed what it could do, how it could be used, and explained kind of how I use it in my classroom, and how it can motivate students to practice on their own. In fact, I even had a student at the end of the year, telling me, yeah, I've already started, watching some videos and practicing some stuff, and she was just really excited to learn over the summer, and that was really, really neat. This has also been used for what are called flipped classrooms, that idea. So really, really neat website. And in conjunction with that, I had the teachers who did this do a search for other Web 2.0 applications that they could add to this that students could use to practice those basic math skills. And I'll show you the database here. They were to add entries here, and you can see some of the different entries. They had the application name, the URL, so students could actually come here. Once we had it compiled, we could make a link to this and provide this for students, and it gives a description of it so that they can students can select good ones, and they know that these sites are actually good sites for them to practice with, at least according to the description. So they had a number of different sites that they found and added here to our database, and obviously as time goes on, that database would grow, providing even more resources for students. And that allowed me too to make sure that I was explaining it correctly, and what we were looking for in these practice opportunities. If teachers were getting the right types of sites for students to use. Now Unit 7 here, I think was, from those who took it, was the most useful, and that is promoting higher order thinking skills through explanations. And I actually, I wanted to really show them how, first of all, we need to make sure we're asking why in our classroom, but then also really focus on the concept that explanation equals understanding. And I actually used an example I've done for the last 2 years in my geometry class, where students actually take somebody else's proof of the Pythagorean theorem, and here's one of my students' examples. They make a PowerPoint, and they have to read and understand that proof, and then they have to present that proof to the class. So they're reading, they're understanding, and then they are communicating. And by communicating that, both in the PowerPoint and verbally in front of the class, it really, they really develop a much greater sense of understanding in the topic. And particularly for the Pythagorean theorem, by the time they're done with this, they don't even have to think about how to do the Pythagorean theorem. It's so second nature to them. Alright, now, with that, one of the recommendations I made was actually a verbal explanation through Audacity. So I did include an Audacity tutorial that I made on how to just simply record and then export an audio file. Do some basic editing and effects with as well. Now my post-assessment, I have a quick little thank you video, and then my post-assessment survey. Similar to the beginning, but here I'm trying to evaluate how far they've come. Has this impacted your proficiency? Do they understand more about the computer and how they can use it for education than they did before? Can they describe an appropriate situation for students to use in a calculator? Did I communicate clearly through that? Did this lesson, this whole module, help them address what they believe to be the biggest issue with students' performance? And then, of course, an open-ended question of, how could I make this module better? And I got some good recommendations, some of which I've already incorporated here. So that's the end of the actual module. I also included these additional resources, basically because I know, even though probably none of us would admit it, but I'm sure there are a lot of teachers out there who frankly just haven't read the Common Core standards for mathematics for their grade. Um, and also, as we've seen earlier in this class, um, you know, many people have never even heard of nets, let alone read them. So I wanted to include those here as well and give a little bit of an explanation of what those are. So these are just additional resources for teachers to use if they are interested, and and if they've already seen them, obviously they can overlook them. But that's the entirety of my module. It's really been a neat opportunity to develop this, and I trust it has been useful and will be useful in the future.